Okay, welcome everyone. We are in Parshas Toldos. So I want to talk about one of the I don't say smaller issues in Parshas Toldos, but one of the sort of side issues that we read and we don't really know what exactly it's talking about. It's the story of the wells that Yitzchak dug, right? Isaac dug wells. Avram had dug wells before, and now it goes through a whole discussion of the wells that Yitzchak dug. I want to explain what that is and why we care about these wells and what the deeper meaning of the wells are. So in the parsha, what happens is we have another famine. There was a famine time of Avraham. Avram went down to Mitzrayim, went down to Egypt. Yitzchak wants to do the same thing. He goes down to on the way to Egypt. He goes to the sort of the pathway to Egypt, which is the land of the Philistines, Plishtim, which is in the southern western region of Israel. Okay, the area of Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gat, Gaza, and he's planning on going down to Egypt. And God, Hashem appears to him and tells him, "No, you don't go down to Egypt. You are a what's called olatamim. You are a pure offering, and you stay in Eretz Israel, stay in the land of Israel." Okay, so what happens is then he goes and he lives in the land of Gror, which is the land of the Plishtim. Now, we got to understand a little bit here. Is this, why is it called the land of the Plishtim? It's Israel. And not only that, like we see that it's a strange thing. It says that Rashi brings down later on, he says that the land, even though God, Hashem gives Yitzchak abundance of produce, and Rashi says, even though this was a bad year, a difficult year, it was very good for him. Even though this was not the same land as the rest of Israel, it's still, he flourished in this land. But it can't not be the land of Israel, because if it is, then what do we gain that Hashem said, don't go down to Egypt if he's already in a foreign land? So this is probably the land of, according to like almost all the Meforshim commentators, this is the land of Israel, but there's some element of it that seems to be lesser than the land of Israel. That's what Rashi says. He says this, even though it's not as great, as holy as the other rest of Israel, still it was very successful for a year for him. So we have to understand the land of Plishtim. What does it mean? It's not really the land of Israel. It's in the when you go through the chapter of Masoi, when it reveals the borders of Israel, it's in the borders of Israel. We know that Gaza was the tribe of Yehuda. So what does it mean that this is not land of Israel exactly? What does that mean? Okay, so what happens is he goes to this land of Plishtim, and they ask about his wife again. He says it's his sister, and then Avimelech figures out, or Zohar through his witchcraft, whatever, he figures out that it's not really his sister, it's his wife. Okay, now he says, "No one should touch these people, leave them alone." And what happens is Yitzhak lives in this land of Gur, of the land of Plishtim. And what happens is he has a tremendous year. It says he sowed, he reaped 100 times what the expectation was. Hashem blessed him. Now, once that happens, the verse says, as he was growing, the people became jealous. Okay, so the Plishtim are jealous of Yitzchak's success. Now, what happens is they say, leave, get out of here. We don't want you. Now it's fascinating. It says now that, according to the way Rashi learns, it says in verse 18, chapter 26, it says, before he left, he redug the wells that his father Avraham dug, which the Philistines, the Plishtim, they satmum, they filled them up. They said that they're dangerous, holes in the ground, whatever could happen. So they filled them up, and then Yitzhak, before he left, he redug them, which is strange because if you're leaving, wow, what's the point of redigging the wells now? You're leaving. I understand if he goes someplace else and you dig wells, but now if they kicked you out and you're leaving, why is it so important? Before you leave, I have to redig my father's wells. A little strange. Why did he do that? All right, that's something you have to understand. And it says he called him the same names as his father. Seems to be some significance that this is really important, that he redug it and he called it the name that his father called it. Okay, now they went to another area. It says to Nachal Gror, which is the extension. It's like the valley of this land of Gror. It's outside the area. Question of, is it still land of Plishtim or not? And he starts digging his own wells. Okay, the first one he digs, they come along and they say, no, it's really, the Plishtim say, it's still ours, still our land. And they argue about it. Asku, they're busy arguing about it, working on it, toiling in it. And Yitzhak calls it this well Asek, which means like a struggle, working over it, toiling over it. Then he dug another well, and they also fought about that one. And now, but the verse still tells us they called it Sittin House. Now it's like Satan, it's like a fighting, contesting. Then they went Vayatek Misham. They went, according to some of the Mefarshim, they went a little bit farther away into an area that's not as close to the land of the Philistines, closer into the district of Beersheba, which is not the land of the Philistines. And they dug again, and this one they didn't fight about, and they called it Rechovot. Why Rechovot? Because Hashem will now expand us, and we will prosper in the land. Okay. Now that's a lot of discussion about wells. There's going to be even more discussion about wells. So, first question I want to understand is, why is the well so important? Why do we need to know details about digging wells? Okay, we're going to have the principle that everything goes according to the basic meaning also. So it actually happened, it was wells, but there must be a deeper significance what this well represents that he's digging and that they're fighting over, and the Torah should tell us about all these wells. Okay, that's the first thing I want to understand. Now, and as I said also, and also the arguing of the wells. Why do I need to know the names? This one's called Aset. This is called Sitnan. The third one they didn't fight about. Why is that so important? What does that represent? Okay. Is this the land of Israel or not land of Israel? Another thing we have to get to. Also, if you go on further, in the next part of the story of the parsha, it says I went to Beersheba, which is close to the land of Plishtim. Strange, it says he went up, which is really Beersheba should be south. Commentaries say since Beersheba is considered the central part of the land of Israel, and Israel is considered higher, spiritually, physically also. I'm not sure how that they understand, but certainly spiritually. And so he went up, even though Beersheba is just geographically maybe called down, or called south. He went to Beersheba, and now what happens is Hashem appears to him. So something that Yitzchak did was very significant, that he merited to have Hashem appear to him and to tell him not to be afraid, that Hashem is with him. And now this gives Yitzchak a certain motivation and a certain expression that it says in the pasuk, he then built an altar. He wasn't known for Yitzchak. We don't see a lot of external activity of Yitzchak, as we talk about many times. He's much more internal. We'll explain more today. But here he went out and he built a mizbeach to Hashem. And he to go and to thank Hashem. Something he did now, Rav Dessler says, made him be able to expand and have a new level of his service to Hashem. Now, what happens now is the king of Plishtim, Avimelech, and his general come, and Yitzhak says to visit him in Beersheba. Why are you visiting me? You hate me. Kick me out. So now they say, we saw that Hashem is with you. Now they have a change of tune. Some commentaries explain that what happened was they were claiming before, Yitzchak, you're digging these wells, you're taking away from our wealth. But then when he left, they say that everything fell apart. So they said, well, we misread this. He's really the source of everything going good for us. We thought he's taking away from us. Kind of like the old story when they kick out the Jews of different countries. And they say, oh, wait a minute, you were the source of the blessing. That's what happens here. And so Avimelech says, we saw Hashem is with you. Let's make a covenant. Now, the covenant is you can't do bad to us. We didn't hurt you. Okay, and make a covenant with us. Now, this is a little strange because there was a covenant before. Back when Avraham was becoming, his name was spreading out throughout the world, Avimelech, the king of Plishtim, wanted to come make a covenant with Avraham. Avraham said, okay, I'll make a covenant with you. I won't harm you and your descendants. And Avraham then told Avimelech that I've dug these wells and your officers stole them from me. And that's the first time, apparently, according to the text, that Avraham actually tells that to Avimelech. I didn't know that. Okay, and we'll make a covenant. And Avraham gives him 7 sheep, which, according to the Medrash, some claim that was the wrong thing to do. Hashem said, what are you giving him? Why are you flattering him like that? Who told you to do that? I gave you things and you possessions for doing the mitzvahs. Why are you giving Avimelech? It's not. But he gives him 7 sheep, and he goes and they make a covenant. And then they call the place Beersheba. They make a covenant, they take a vow, they won't harm, Avraham won't harm Avimelech, and vice versa. The Plishtim won't harm the Jews. And they call the place Beersheba, the well of Shava. It said Beersheba. Says not Sheva, it's Beersheba, which we'll see the Sforno says is referring to the Shavua, the vow, right? It's not Sheva, unless you say it's called in the 7 sheep he gave him. But the simple explanation seems to be it's called Beersheba because he made a Shavua, a vow. Okay. What happens here? So why does Avimelech want to come make another vow with Yitzchak? So the simple explanation is because I guess he broke the other one, right? They kicked him out. They did these things to him. Some commentaries learned he broke the deal already. He had to remake the covenant. Let's say a little differently, but let's take that approach for now. And so he had to make a new covenant with him. And that's what happens. He makes a new covenant with him. And they get up in the morning, they make this vow, and they leave. Now, the text says, that same day, verse 32, same day, the servants of Yitzhak came and said, we found another well. Okay, so they dug apparently 3. Now they had another in the land of close to Gror. Now they were in Beersheba, and they dug another well. They found water. Now it says, and they called it Shiva. And therefore the city is called Beersheba. The city is called Beersheba. I'm a little confused. Wasn't it called Beersheba before Beersheba? Wasn't it called that before when Avram did it? So what do you mean it's called now? Because of this, it seems to have been called, already had that name. So somehow this name of Beersheba is in time of Avram, but somehow it didn't apparently click in fully, and now with Yitzchak, it's called it until this day. That's what the verse says. Okay. So I want to understand this whole story. I want to understand why we care about the well so much. And I also want to understand that, Avraham, they didn't, even though they stuffed up his wells and stole his wells, they didn't kick him out. They were Avram was the prince. Yitzchak, they threw him out. I mean, they came back to him and said, okay, let's make a deal, but they kicked him out before. So I don't really understand what's the difference in Avram and Yitzchak here, to understand that also. Then I think also we have to talk about something that's, I don't know is a clear answer on this, that I have a clear answer. But it says that when Avram made the covenant with Avimelech, it said that you should not harm me, nini unechdi, me, my children, and my grandchildren. And Rashi says that you see that a parent feels a closeness for 3 generations. Great grandchildren, it's more distant. So Avimelech said, don't harm him, his son, and his grandson. And yet we have a strange situation that the land, the city of Jerusalem was owned by was being held by the descendants of Avimelech. Even though it's called Yevus, the commentaries say it wasn't the Yevusi, it was the name of the place was Yevus, and it was owned by the descendants of Avimelech, and they say that's the reason the Jews did not conquer the land, the city of Jerusalem, until much later. Right? What happens is when they go into the land of Israel, Yoshua conquers parts of it. For some reason, he cannot conquer the land of the Philistines. The land of the Philistines are the thorn in the side of the Jews throughout the time of the judges and throughout the time of the kings. And there's a question, did we even conquer all of the land of the Philistines? It doesn't say that. It says in the book of Yoshua, we did not conquer the land of the Philistines. Okay? We did not conquer Jerusalem, which was under the power of the Philistines at a certain point. Now, the land of the Philistines we did not conquer, which was again in the southwest of Israel. We didn't conquer it. We didn't merit for some reason. Apparently, it says that with Yoshua we couldn't really conquer it. It says that Yehuda may have conquered some of the land. Commentaries say, well, maybe he subjugated, but he didn't conquer, he didn't get rid of them, and then they took it back. And there's a whole discussion first on the land of the Philistines in the southwest that apparently we did not conquer that land, and they were a thorn in our sides. They were like the main people that we were fighting throughout the period of the judges. It seems that even though David may have conquered the land of the Philistines, according to the most commentators, he didn't actually get rid of them. And even Shlomo made them pay taxes, but he didn't get rid of them. They were still there. The time where it seems most that the Jews did conquer was much later. In time of Uzziah, the king, they did a little, to some degree. And then in time of Chizkiah, the verses say that he did conquer the land of the Philistines. The Philistines were there throughout the First Temple period. Seemingly, historically, they may have been wiped out. I don't know if Chizkiah wiped them out. It seems they may have wiped out afterwards. The Jews were exiled. I'm not so clear on that. But the point was that the Philistine area was a thorn in the side of the Jews throughout the whole stories of the book of Judges and the book of Shmuel. David and Shlomo maybe did something, but they didn't conquer them fully. And then much later, so we couldn't, for some reason, get the land of the Philistines. We couldn't beat them there. And in Jerusalem, there was some kind of vow that Abraham made to Avimelech that forbade the Jews from conquering Jerusalem. And it says in the book of Shmuel that the Philistines, they put 2 statues on their entrance to Jerusalem, and one was a blind person, one was a lame person, and that was supposed to represent Yitzchak, who was blind, and Yaakov, who became lame, and then he was healed. And they put the promise that Abraham had said that he was not going to attack them. So it's a little strange that Abraham made this vow and kind of kept us from getting Jerusalem for so long. And what's even stranger, and this is what I don't have a full answer for, it seems that David is a lot more than 3 generations. A lot more than 3 generations after Abraham. And the way the commentaries understand it, that's now was the opportunity in times of David to conquer Jerusalem. And he said we have to get rid of those statues because now the deal is over. Time is expired. We could take Jerusalem. So is it 3 generations? Was it more? Let's see. There's a medrash that says, and I don't know if it's a medrash that's arguing with the way Rashi's saying it or if it's explaining it. Try to give an answer, but there's a medrash seems to say that the deal was not just 3 generations; it was the time of the 7 shepherds. It's more than 7 generations, but we have Avram. We know it's Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David. Chronologically, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef, Moshe, Aaron, and David. So David's the culmination of the 7 shepherds, but it's no longer 7 generations. So what does it mean that he made this vow to him, and only now David could conquer back Jerusalem? According to one medrash, they had control over the Maras Machpelah, which is a little strange because it seems it's the Chivi and the Chiti and the verses, but somehow these people had control of Maras Machpelah, and Avram made the deal because he wanted to. He was willing to take Maras Machpelah now and push off getting Jerusalem to later. So I don't understand that. All right, let's try to make sense of this whole story with the wells, what the wells are, and digging them, and undigging them, and it's a little bit hard to understand. Let's try to see what we can put together here. So let's understand first. I wanted to explain the idea of the wells first. What wells represent? Because there's the physical wells, which is, it's your owning of the land. I mean, you need water in the land to survive. So the simple explanation is that wells are very important, especially in a place that doesn't have streams. It doesn't have a lot of water. I'm not saying it does it today. Maybe it's an issue, but wells are crucial for life, for water, for developing a land. That's simple. But the deeper explanation is like this. The idea of a well is that there is water underneath the ground, and you need to do your work to pull it out. Okay, it's different than let's say I have a pit that I store water in. Okay, so it's there. That's my water. I have rain that comes from above. It's not, one is I store my water in this pit. I made the pit, I poured the water in, or whatever it is. And one is rain comes from above. That's Hashem giving it to us. And one is I'm gathering it. The well is a different quality. The well is that you need to do your work to dig deep down. And when you do, you will uncover what is always there. And that really is what happens in our lives. And this is a very important fundamental concept. In other words, what's happening in life is that, you work. What do you work to become? You become the person you really are deep down. We call it the root of your soul, what you are. And there is a lot of work. But the work is like a tree that has everything built into the seed, but it needs to be nurtured to come out. That's what we have to do. We have to work to nurture, to bring out what we are. So it's our work, but we're going to make ourselves what we really are in the root of our greatness. So that is what digging a well means. It means that I am working and I am pulling out with my own work what I really am. The water's there all along. And therefore, the deep representation of this well is that Abraham dug wells. That was his service to Hashem. That's the way he did it. So he pulled out himself. And that's why the Plishtim didn't fight with Abraham, really, because Abraham, they saw, Abraham, the great Abraham, the master of kindness, and they related to him in that way. He was Nasi Elohim. He was the great one amongst them. And they saw that clearly, and they therefore honored Avraham in a certain way. As we know, Avraham had many followers, right? There were many followers of Avraham, Where'd all those followers go? Well, when Yitzchak came on the scene, and he had a different approach. His approach was gevura, was instead of being the outgoing person in kindness, he was the reflective person to make sure he didn't do anything wrong, self-analysis and reproach, and to the people left. Like, well, this is not fun. This is not what we wanted. We wanted, hey, it's a great job as table. No, he's like, okay, get your act together. You're doing the right thing. And they left. The same thing here. When Yitzchak was in the land of Gur, the people did not go and give him the same level of understanding that he had to Avram. As a matter of fact, the Beis Yaakov is an incredible thing. He says that when the people got jealous of Yitzchak, that motivated him to go to a higher level. He said, why? Because you're only jealous of someone that's similar to you. Like if somebody is like a completely different entity, right? You don't have a monkey that jealous of a human being because they're completely different entities. There's a king and there's a commoner. The commoner can be jealous of another person that's in his realm, but something that's totally out of his realm, it's not connected. So when Yitzchak felt they were jealous of him, he felt there was a lack in himself, that he's not doing everything he can to remove the jealousy, because if he was so much far above them, they wouldn't be jealous. That's actually what the Beis Yaakov says. So, and that's how he even explains that what happened was Yitzchak then redug, when he says they were jealous, that pushed him. He said, I'm not doing what I gotta do. He redug the wells of his father. We may explain that to mean that he did go to the approach that his father had, Avraham, of the kindness, the chesed, but he now brought it out in his own unique way. He called them the names his father called the wells because it was his father's source, but he brought it to completion now by balancing it with the kindness, with the proper boundaries. So that's maybe explains why he had to redig the wells. Once they were jealous of him, he said, okay, I got to do what I got to do. I got to redig Abraham's avoda, his service of Hashem, in my way, but it's from the root of Avraham. And that's where he redug the wells. Okay. Now, then he goes to, now, I just want to point out here, the Sforno learns that Avram had 3 wells. That's important because we're going to keep this to put this figured all together. He had 3 wells. So according to that, Yitzhak now redug 3 wells before he left Gror, before he left the city of Avimelech, the land of Plishtim. He goes now to the outskirts, to Nachal Gror, and he starts digging himself. Now, the first one he digs, they argue over. Again, the Beis Yaakov says, what were they arguing over? He said, okay, I'm going to show you my approach. It wasn't showing to them, but he was, the deeper explanation is he was digging his own way to show God in the world. And they fought over it. They said, you're not better than we are. So he says the first one was Asek with Asek, to be busy in Torah, to be busy in the understanding of godliness. And they said, we're great philosophers too. We have our great ideas. And they didn't see any difference between Yitzhak and them. So the first one he called Asek, even though he was trying to be mitasek, to be working in Torah, it ended up being that they thought they were equal. The second one, he said, now service of Hashem. Work hard to do service of Hashem. We also do our service. We have our approach. We have our things we do. So that was sitna. It was a contention. Now the third one, the Beis Yaakov says what Yitzchak was saying was he was willing to suffer hardship to be able to do what is right and serve Hashem. And that's the person weren't willing to do, because why would a person want to do that? If a person's goal is themselves, or their goal is whatever it is, how to get the most. So that right now I'm not. So why would you serve? And that's what the Medrash says, that Yitzchak asked for sufferings. But it's a fascinating thing. So once the Plishtim said no, we're not going there. We're not going there. We don't want the challenges. We want things to be good. He says it gets like David that, and this is what he means that now Hashem will expand us in the land. He says that we know the Gemara says that suffering could be a tiny thing. How far could the tachlis of suffering? If you pull out, you have think you have a few coins, 3 coins, you have 2 coins. You order your wine hot and it comes cold. That could also be called suffering. And as a person could have challenges in life that could fix him up, and Hashem does it in the kindest way. It doesn't have to be the greatest suffering. So Yitzhak said, I'm willing to go and to get myself fixed up whatever way I can to be whole. So that was the idea of the wells, and that by the 3rd well they pulled off. Now, according to that, it's really the 6th well because 3 of Avram, now 3 of Yitzchak. Now, I want to explain this a little bit more deeply. I asked earlier, I said, I don't understand. I mean, is the land of the Plishtim, is that Israel, not Israel? And most commentators say it is, but Rashi says, and other people say it's not, it doesn't have the same level, the land of Israel. Why not? So the Or HaChaim says that that what happens is that it wasn't muchzak, it wasn't held in the same way as the rest of the land of Israel. Avraham, maybe it's like held it more because he worked it, he plowed it, he did stuff, but somehow he says it wasn't held, it wasn't muchzak, held by our forefathers in the same way of other parts of the land of Israel. I want to try to explain what, and that's what it means. Also, we couldn't conquer it because we never got a hold of it by our forefathers. Avraham was kind of there. Yitzchak was kicked out of there, and they never got a hold on the land of Plishtim, and therefore it says, the Medrash says that they won't have the full control till Yemos Mashiach, which is interesting. I mean, we have Ashkelon, that we don't have right now, but they won't have full control till times of Mashiach because it was not fully held by the Avos, by forefathers, and therefore it was a process that was happening, but it has to come to completion. Now, with this, we can explain a lot of things from what we talked about. And I want to explain, Avraham did have an encounter with the Plishtim, and it ended however it ended, and he lived there and then he left. But Avraham was not the antidote to the Plishtim. The place, and that's why it was, maybe we could say it wasn't complete then, because Avraham wasn't their antithesis. Yitzchak was. Why is that? The Plishtim are called lates. They're called the scorners. They are the joker who takes away something. When someone says something, oh, you guys should do something, and they'll make a joke, and they'll take away whatever seriousness of the issue is. Where do we know that from? There's a few sources. One is that it says when they conquered Shimshon, they said, bring Shimshon to L'sachek, to play, to entertain us, right? We know they had the giant stadium. That was their entertainment center. They were scoffers. They were late sunning. And that's even the most amazing thing. It's like it says that, when Sarah became pregnant, so it says before that she was taken by Avimelech, the king of the Plishtim. He right in the story of Avram, and Avram had the whole story. So when Sarah became pregnant, so it says that the late Sonei Ador, the scoffers, the jokesters of the generation, said this is the ultimate joke. What is this? You guys want to claim that, Avram impregnated Sarah, now they're going to have this great child, Yitzchak. Yitzchak is really a child of Avimelech. The ultimate in scorning. Now let me explain what this means, a lates, because a lates is a pasuk that says in Mishlei, it says, lets you hit the late. You can't talk to him, nothing to talk to. The guy who cannot go and hear something, and he'll have to make the joke, will take the whole air out of the balloon. So like that guy, it says you can't talk to him, it says rap him, hit him, let's, and then pesi yachkim. Then a fool, somebody who believes everything, will say, whoa, wait a minute, I got to rethink this. The Plishtim had that quality. Now I want to explain that, which is very funny, because how is that the opposite of Yitzchak? Well, let's think about Yitzchak, because Yitzchak is very strange himself. Yitzchak, we know, is the master of din, of self-control, self-restraint. We don't hear a lot about Yitzchak. He's maintaining himself. Here he got a sign from Hashem, and after after he redug Avram's wells and he started to expand, he made him his back. But generally, Yitzchak is holding in. He is din. He's gevurah. He's boundaries. So why is his name Yitzchak? His name is laughter, and every place you look with Yitzchak, it's all talking about laughter, right? Sarah laughs, Abraham laughs. It says in the day that Sarah gave birth to Yitzchak, the whole world was filled with laughter. Everyone was cracking up. People that were sick got better. People that were not couldn't get pregnant got pregnant. All the good things were happening. The whole world was filled with joy and laughter, which seems to be extremely counter the idea of gevura, of control, of restraint. So how is Yitzhak laughter? And then the Plishtim are this other kind of laughter. What does that mean? I try to understand this. It's a deep point. I hope we can get it. So it says we say this in Neishus Chayil. It says Vatizchak liyom acharon. The Neishus Chayil will laugh on the last day. When's the last day? The day of death. She's laughing. Why is she laughing then? Why is she laughing? Why is that the day of? And also the Gemara says that in this world, you can't fill your mouth with laughter. In the future, you can, but now you can't fill your mouth with laughter. Why is that? Because laughter is a certain expression that goes beyond what your vessel, your kalim, can hold. Two extreme actions. One is crying and one is laughing. Crying is, the word livkot means like mavucha, like a maze. You feel trapped, and there's a tremendous loss, and there's no way to handle the loss. Tears come out. When people laugh, the tears come out too. What is laughter? Laughter means that a person can, let's say, he becomes so happy, he would never have dreamed of it. It's beyond what he could handle. He could burst into laughter. Even laughter at a joke is the same idea, in the sense that the person thinks it's one way, he's sure it's going to be this way, and it's completely the opposite, and that causes the laughter. When he sees the pompous person slipping on a banana peel, he laughs because it was all this way, and now it's the opposite way. Laughter is an expression that's something beyond. And the true laughter is when you have gone beyond. We have life, we have a lot of challenges, we have all these different things. When you get to after this, you see, wow, it all made sense. It was all incredible. And now all of the limitation we have, we can burst into laughter. That's why the word Yitzchak, when we flip it around, it spells Kates Chai, the end of life. Yitzchak died and he came back to life. And that is the ultimate laughter. The ultimate laughter is when you think you're stuck and you think you're dead and there's no way out. And now the Jewish people start. Avram is 100 years old. Sarah is 90 years old. It's the end. No, it's not. It's the beginning. And that bursts out into laughter. So Yitzchak's limitations make it that he's able to actually create true laughter because he's not all over the place. Where he is he has his boundaries, and within these boundaries, how he acts, he limits, and therefore he earns and he can perceive what is beyond. Okay? So now, let's look at the Plishtim, the Philistines. A person who has, let's say, has fears, which would seem to be in the same category as this type of gevura. He's afraid of stuff. So there's different ways you could deal with that. One way to deal with that is to ignore the fears and be a scorner. That's the Plishtim. They had a lot of fears. That's why they had a lot of idolatry. And that's why they thought they were doing something also. They had all their idolatries that they were doing. What was their idolatry? Because they themselves felt we're afraid of this, so we're going to handle it by manipulating our idolatry in this way. That's how they dealt with their fears. and by scorning and pushing off the real fear. What is the deeper way to deal with this? I want to explain this. It's very tricky, but there's two Gemaras that discuss fear. One Gemara is like this. There was a student walking behind his rabbi, Bishmol ben Yossi, and the rabbi said he was afraid. The rabbi said he was always afraid. And he said, "You're a sinner." What? So the student, being a good student, quickly quoted a verse. He says, "Praise the word, is the one who's always afraid." It's good. So he says, no, that's for divrei Torah, the words of Torah. And the other thing is for things in this world. You have fear of everything else, and that's not a good sign. Rav Cohen says something so deep and so amazing, and I try to do it, and it's something recommended if we could try to pull it off. We all have fears. He says when a person goes and says, all of my fears, I'm turning to the fear of Hashem. And it is a fear that I am not meeting up to what I'm supposed to do. But it's in the right place. It's not like I'm going to ignore it by being a scoffer. I'm gonna try to get out of it by manipulating some type of idolatry of some sort, of putting my trust in something stupid. But a person turns the fears and says, the fear I have, the root of the fear I have is that I am lacking in my service of Hashem, and realizing that is a part of Yiras Hashem, of awe of God. He says that brings joy. Incredible. So Tzaddik says when a person goes and he takes the fear and he turns it to say, what is the fear I have? A person's afraid of dying, a person's afraid of losing a job, a person's afraid of many, many, many things. But the root of that has to be, I'm afraid that I'm not meeting up to what my service is and I'm supposed to do, and that's Yiras Hashem. And I turn that to Yiras Hashem and say, that's what I'm afraid of. All these things are side issues. They're all like the results of what the true fear is am I becoming the person I'm supposed to be? And if I'm not, then I'm doing the wrong thing. And there's a place where that is a part of Yiras Hashem, of having fear of Hashem. And then when a person feels that, he feels a freedom and he feels schok, he feels like happy. A Gemara also says that there's an incredible story. There was Rava went to visit this idolater, Bar Sheshach. And the idolater was sitting there. He was in this, whirlpool, and he had these harlots around him, unclothed or whatever, and he was sitting in rose water, and he looks to the rabbi and says, hey, you guys have this in your world to come? The rabbi says, yeah, we have a lot better. There's no better than this, he says. He says, yeah, there is, because you guys have fear of the king, and we don't have fear of the king. And Bar Sheshach says, why am I fear of the king? Look where I am. And that minute, they came and said, Bar Sheshach, the king needs you right now. They pull him out. He's freaking out. And then he says that the eyes of the ones who wished you bad pop out. Whatever this means, Rava answered Amen, and Bar Sheshach's eye pops out. Whatever that last part means, that it was in himself that he really held bad to the Jewish people, and it bounced back on him. But the part that I want us to understand is that the rabbi said, we have better because we don't have the fear of the malchus, of the kingship, and you don't. We have fear of Hashem. Yeah, but that's a good fear. That's the proper fear. And when that proper fear is like that, then a person can actually develop to have schok, to have laughter. That's the deeper understanding of the yira, of fear that's misplaced. And that's the fear of the Philistines, and therefore they got to have their idolatries to try to deal with it, or they shut it down by making a joke. And Yitzchak's awe of Hashem, his fear of Hashem, leads to a proper relationship, which ultimately will lead to getting to a time where everything's where it's supposed to be, and you go beyond and you have laughter. That's maybe the deeper reason why Abraham, it wasn't finished. And that's maybe why the land of the Philistines is not really called the land of Israel fully, because Avram couldn't finish that job. It had to be Yitzchak. His battle is the scoffers of the Philistines. And that's why they're pushing back on him. They want to say, no, you're not better than us. We also have the fear of our gods and whatever. So they're pushing back on him. But then what happens is Yitzchak brings it out, and he expands to way beyond. And that's the last well, which is Sheva. That's why it's an amazing thing. The Sforno says it was the seventh well, because there were three of Avraham, three of Yitzchak, and then there was the seventh. And he says that's why when Avraham called, he said Beersheva, because it was the vow. But Yitzchak, now it was the seventh. It was the seventh well. That's why he called it Shiva, 7. Now, what does that mean? That ties back to what we said earlier. That there 7 is the point of completion, right? 7 is the Shabbos. We're moving, we're doing our work. Avraham had 3 wells, the 6 dimensions, we're doing the things. And now we come to the completion. And that's what happened with Avraham. Avraham said to Avimelech, he said, okay, I'm going to guarantee right now that we will not harm you for a certain period of time. Now, I don't know if it was, maybe one way to say it was the 3 generations of the 3 wells. Maybe Avram guaranteed three generations, and then Yitzchak guaranteed 3 generations, and that's how you got to 6, and then the 7th. That could be, in other words, the answer would be that yes, Avram had to guarantee 3, but then he didn't finish the job. He's had to guarantee 3, and that was 6. And the 7th one was when David could already attack. But that's the deeper meaning. The deeper meaning is to acquire the land of Israel, we have to come to the completion. Avraham had to make a deal. He had to go and say, okay, I got to get the land of the Maras Machpelah, the place, the root of the forefathers. But in the end, we are going to complete all of the missions till we come to the 7th, to the completion, to Be'er Sheva, to the 7th in the line, which is David HaMelech. And then when we complete our personality, complete our midas, we complete all of our mission. Avraham Chesed, Yitzchak had to put together the Gevura in that whole new way. And then the Shleimus, the wholeness is going to come out, that we can actually take Yerushalayim at that point, the 7th generation. And that could be, the commentary says, the fixing of the seven sheep that he gave was a certain lacking, and says because of that there was 7 great people killed in Avram, about the Plishtim, the 7 generations it took to get the land of Israel back. But that was the process. The process was dig the wells to pull out your unique avoda. Avraham did that. Yitzchak did that. The klipa, the surrounding power of the Plishtim was very, very strong for various reasons I'm not getting into now, but as a scoffer, they just made fun of truth and just knocked it out. Yitzchak had to be the final battle with the Plishtim, but even that was going to now culminate in him finding the 7th well, which would eventually represent the idea of the 7th generation, or the 7th Roeh, shepherd from Avraham, being able to come and to complete the mission and take Jerusalem, because it has now been earned by the Jewish people. All the best.